Hello, and thanks for the intro. And let's put one more thing slightly straight here. So I can't channel for Ilkka. So I'm Anssi Ahlberg from the Finnish digital agency, and I will be followed by our technical project manager Ilkka Seppa from Go4, who will give then a technical demonstration of the Toolkit capabilities. So I'm going to first give you a really brief walkthrough on what the X-Road Toolkit is, why we did it, and what it is for. Some of the topics that I will be covering here is the background, why we did it, what the toolkit is, very high overview there. What can you use the toolkit for? Can you tailor it for own use later down the road? What happens to the toolkit in the future? And then we will be followed by a technical demo by Ilkka from Go4. So quickly carrying you through the background and the business needs. So we basically recognized 3 customer problems with the data exchange layer, which is the X-Road implementation in Finland. First of all, we were getting a fairly steady, constant stream of customer feedback on challenges with commissioning and onboarding new customers. We got a lot of feedback on how joining the data exchange layer and getting the security servers up and running in production was not only slow, but it was also difficult and expensive to do. And therefore, we actually had some kind of a barrier of entry there. At the same time, we were also seeing a fairly high number of repeating customer support cases in our customer service, that we had customers who were not able to configure their security servers correctly. They definitely had difficulties with getting the certificates correctly and setting the certificates correctly, and also a lot of difficulties and a lot of small mishaps with configuring the services and subsystems correctly. And this all resulted in us not seeing the customers moving from the test environment to the production with the extent that we would have been happy with. At the same time, we also had an understanding that going forward in the future, a lot of the new members on the Finnish data exchange layer will be joining the data exchange layer via a proxy, meaning that there will be other companies assisting them on getting onboarded. And we started thinking that how can we facilitate that process and how can we make it as smooth and efficient as possible. We were also doing other things on our onboarding process, such as improving our documentation and streamlining the process, but we knew that those would only be lesser helps and something else needed to be done to address the problems. The solution that we came up with is the X-Road Toolkit. And basically what it is for and what it is that it is a set of scripts and ready-made commands for both configuring the basic configuration of a security server and also automating all that part. We've developed the toolkit so that the commands that you use for configuring the security server with the toolkit are parameterized in a way that you can easily enter your own customer or your own environment specific parameters in the commands and then run the toolkit to configure the security server. Basically, what we have done is a Python-based tool, which is delivered as a Python package index, or PyY. The toolkit uses the security server REST management API. So while that gives also a lot of possibilities, there are some known limitations in the toolkit that we haven't been able to address at this stage. So that is something for the future, for the later down the road. Basically, what you can do with the toolkit is that it enables you to automatically configure one or more security servers. If you're configuring more than one security server at a time, then the assumption is that you will be configuring identical security servers. Basically, what this leads down to is that it'll save your configuration time and also addresses the part where we were seeing a lot of issues with the configurations. You can enter the commands, you can actually verify the commands in advance, you can enter the commands identically and make sure that everything is correct. So basically, that should cut down on the number of errors. The toolkit also actually, since it uses the security server REST management API, it also enables remote configuration. So no one has to be physically present at the security server to carry out this operation. And we've also developed it with the idea in mind that you can either do it so that you use the toolkit to enter one command by command, or you can actually automate the whole process and basically run it as one long batch operation for one security server and then move on to the other one. Basically, what you can do with this toolkit and what you can't do with the toolkit. It is for the configuration part, configuring a already installed security server so that it's actually ready for use. You can also perform some basic security server maintenance tasks with it, but what you cannot do is actually install the security server software or install the physical server that the security server software runs on. So we're basically expecting that you have a freshly built security server up and running, waiting to be configured. And that's the part where the toolkit steps in. Ilkka is going to cover all of this in more depth in the technical demo part. So really just quickly walking you through the main points on what commands are available in the toolkit. So you can initialize the security server, you can add the configuration anchor, you can set and list the tokens, you can set the timestamping service, you can manage the certificates. That is the part where the toolkit is not at its best. It's some of the things that we or someone may look for further later down the road on making the certificate part a little bit easier. You can also create and register one or more subsystems in the security server. And you can also create one or more services and set all the service parameters as well as the access rights for the services on the security server using the X-Road toolkit. Basically, we support all the three kinds of services that we have widely available or widely used in Finland. The older SOAP services, the REST API, or the services with the REST API with a base path, and also the services with a REST API with OpenAPI 3 description. All of these are actually supported on the toolkit. Some of the advanced things you can do with the toolkit is you can configure the high availability implementation using the security server's built-in load balancing. So the toolkit basically has the basic commands for doing that. Some of the maintenance tasks, we haven't actually done a lot on the maintenance front, but the most common maintenance tasks, at least as we see them in Finland, you can renew the security server certificates. You can also manage your organization's subsystems and services, and you can also manage the backups on the security server using the toolkit. Then I think the big question that you all have burning in your minds right now is that I've been only talking about the toolkit, that it's been done for the Finnish data exchange layer and so on. Can you tailor it for your own use? So basically, the delivery as it is at the moment is that the toolkit itself, it only works on the Finnish data exchange layer. For example, setting the certificates and the related scripts for configuring the certificates and so on only works with the Finnish certificate settings. What we have done, however, is that we have put in place all the basic enablers for you to do your own country-specific or your own environment-specific adaptations later down the road. So the toolkit actually does contain all the capabilities for regional configurations and regional packages later down the road. We just haven't done them for the Finnish use since we only need the Finnish version in Finland. Then a couple of words on the toolkit future. What happens to the toolkit? So we, as the Finnish Digital Agency, we will have the maintenance responsibility for the toolkit for the end of this year, after which we hand it over to NIS for NIS's future development starting in the beginning of the year 2022. A few words on where you can find further information on the toolkits if you really got interested at this stage. You will be getting these slides, so I'm not going to cover any of this at this stage. But I think that now we go for the more juicy part, and it is time for the toolkit technical demo. Thank you on my behalf.
Hi everyone, my name is Ilkka Seppa. I'm a technical project manager for Go4. Our team has had the privilege to work with the Finnish digital agency and NIS in the Security Server Toolkit project. Next, I'm gonna give you a little demo how it works. The Security Server Toolkit can be found in GitHub. This repository is under Nordic Institute. And in the repository there is one important document. It's the user guide. Let's take a look at that. So this is a very detailed document. Looking at the table of contents, there's a lot of relevant information, but we are going to concentrate in the installation section for the purposes of this demo. So the prerequisites to installation include Python 3.6 or later, and then we are going to need the Python package manager. So use these steps to install the prerequisites. The actual installation of the toolkit, usually you will want to use the latest officially released version 3.0 currently, so the command can be found here, this one. And I have already installed that on my computer. I can check it. Let's say xrdsst version. So this command xrdsst comes from the toolkit installation. So I have the 3.0 version running there. Looks pretty good. So what we are going to do in this demo, we are going to install we are going to configure a freshly installed security server. So my environment, I have a Linux-based computer. I'm running LXD containers here. I have a central server with a couple of members. I have a test CA for signing the certificates. I have Security Server 1 running the management services, and my Security Server 2 is the freshly installed one that I'm going to configure using the toolkit. And I'm going to add a couple of subsystems there, and one of those subsystems will include an OpenAPI 3 service. And as that service, I'm going to use this Swagger Pet Store example. It's available in the internet. Alright, let's get to it. So the first thing you need to do is configure access for the toolkit to the security server you want to configure. There's two methods to do that. The first one is using the API keys, and the second one is using SSH based access. In this demo I'm going to use the API key based approach. So let's access the Security Server 2 container and create the API key here. Just copy the command here like that, and my API key is this one. Let's copy it, and I'm going to export the API key as an environment variable. Toolkit API key equals to this one. And now we can take a look at the configuration of the toolkit. So I have pre-created this configuration file, 38 lines, to configure my new security server. So I have commented here different sections. So the access configuration is the first part here. So the API key, here is the environment variable that contains the API key. We have the URL where the security server API is running. In the initialization section, we point out the configuration anchor from the central server, which member we are going to use, what is the security server code, token ID, and what is the PIN code. In the certificates section, I'm using the Finnish certificate profile. There are other international profiles available as well. And in the certificates section, I'm pointing out where the certificates, where the toolkit can find the certificates then. And the following parameters will be written to the certificates. And then in the client section, I'm configuring a couple of subsystems I want to add to the security server. So the first one is the client, and the other one is named service. And under the service, I'm going to import the API description from the pet store example. So here is the URL to that one. And then finally, I'm going to grant access to the client subsystem to call this service. That's it very briefly. Let's start configuring next. So let's give it this command xrd SSD and point out the configuration file like this, and let's say apply. So the toolkit starts configuring the security server. It's kind of a semi-automatic tool at the moment. It can run until the certificate process, and it's going to stop there. It requires some manual steps there to create the certificate signing requests, sign them, import the certificates, register and activate them, and then we can continue running. So at the moment, if we take a look at the security server, the status is that we have the subsystems here, but they are not registered yet. And in the keys and certificates section, we can see the certificate signing requests, and we need to do some steps in order to sign them and import back the certificates. Let's do that next. So first, let's download the certificate signing requests, and the command looks like this: download CSRs. And then with the test CA, I can browse to these CSRs here, sign them, save, and the other one is the signing key. All right, and now I'm just going to rename them so that the toolkit can find them out and sign very simply. And now I can continue the certificate process, so let's import the certificate next. Import. register, and finally activate. So now we are quite far already. Let's see the status here. So we can see that the authentication certificate registration is in progress. We need to wait for that to complete before we continue. Okay, the authentication certificate has been registered, so we can continue our process. So at the moment our clients have not been registered yet, but now since we have the certificates we can continue with the registration and the rest of the stuff, even adding the service there. So simply we run the apply command again. So it's gonna do the subsystem registration and add the service to the relevant subsystem. Okay, that's done now. So let's take a look at the security server again. So we see that the subsystem registration is in progress at the moment. It's gonna take a while. We can take a look at the service subsystem and verify that we have the OpenAPI service there running. Yeah, looks good. And also the access rights have been configured. Let's remove the TLS certificate verification. Now I don't have the TLS certificate and I want to try out the service. So let's do that manually. Now we are still waiting for the registration of the subsystems to complete. Okay, registration has been completed and now we can try to call the service. So paste this command. So we are using the curl tool to call the pet store service through our security server 2. So find by tags. So all the pets using this tag default tag should be returned in JSON format. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, and here is the big list of pets with the default tag, so yes, it seems to work. And that concludes the demo. Thank you.
Ilkka and Anssi, thanks a lot for the presentation and thanks a lot also for this walkthrough, this demo. We have some time to take a couple of questions from that of course they came up from your presentations, and one already would be about the fact that you mentioned that only Finnish in the presentation. You mentioned only like the Finnish country packages and the X-Road generic packages, but what about some future adaptations for other countries?
Yeah, that is a good question. If I may take that first, and Ilkka, maybe you can comment on that one. As I said, we are maintaining the toolkit for the end of this year, and after that we do a handover to Nice for further development. I can't comment fully on the roadmap for Nice, but I know that there has been talk on further country packages for at least the X-Road members, but ultimately this will be a question for Nice to answer. I think that's the viewpoint from our side.
Okay, but and then also talking about the specific like Finnish digital agency case, you said that in the presentation you said that the Finnish digital agency is responsible for X-Road 6 and the versions that are based on that one. But then what happens if, for example, I need a bug fix or I discover like some vulnerability?
Yeah, if there is something with the toolkit, or do you want to actually take this, Ilkka? I heard you mention something.
Yeah, Ilkka, let's join us live as well. We saw you in the video, so join us now.
Yes, okay. Hopefully you can hear me well. So you were asking about security vulnerabilities related to Xrode 6 and such. So Anssi mentioned that DVV is maintaining the Xrode toolkit probably until the end of the year or so, and also responsible for the security fixes if something should occur during that period. But the toolkit project is being transferred to NIS currently, and in the future for during Xrode 7 and such, NIS will take over the responsibility and produce the vulnerability fixes and whatever is needed.
Okay, perfect. Anssi and Ilkka, Ilkka, thanks a lot also for joining us live, because we saw you in video, but in the recorded video. But now, we're glad to have you here as well. And Anssi, instead with you, we will catch up with you also in a bit, because you have another session in today's community event coming up. And so Ilkka, thanks for participating, and thanks for the demo and the walkthrough.